all humanity comes from one person. Everyone has their origins in Adam. Why is that important? Because it means no person or group of people can say they're better than another. We all come from the same source. So the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept, he took one of his ribs, closed up its place with flesh, and the rib that the Lord had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. So why did God create Eve from Adam's rib? Let's explore briefly the deeper significance here. Man was created from the ground. Adam comes from the word Adamah, which means ground, more specifically red ground. And woman was created from man's side. And I think that's important that man was created first and woman wasn't created at the same time, but was actually taken from the man. Because what it tells us is that all humanity comes from one person. Everyone has their origins in Adam. Why is that important? Because it means no person or group of people can say they're better than another. We all come from the same source. No one is better than anyone else. That's why racism is so stupid, right? I mean, we all have the same origin. We all have the same biological ancestor that we could trace back to. But then there's something else, right? Why was Eve taken from the side? Why wasn't she wasn't taken from the head that she should rule over man. She wasn't taken from the hands because woman was not called to be man's servant. And she wasn't taken from the feet because woman was not meant to be beneath him, but she was taken from the side. Why? Because she is his equal, the one who will stand at his side. Man and woman are meant to complete one another together. They mirror the image of God to the world. But of course, there is more. When Yeshua was on the cross, he had his what pierced? His side pierced. He, as we said many times, is the last Adam. Why? Because not only is he making an atonement on the cross for Adam, but he's making an atonement for Eve, the one who was taken from the side, and he's birthing the new Eve, the church. And we literally see this in the original language because the word for pierce in his side, John 19:34 in the Greek, is the same word that the ancient translation of Genesis chapter 2 in Greek, the Septuagint, when it says the side, the rib, it's the same word in Greek as the side that Yeshua had pierced. And so we see the deeper connection here. God is making a tikkun, a correction for the sin of the woman. Listen, the old and the new always tie back together. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing that we see in the picture of the cross. Every detail is there for a reason. Yeshua has his side pierced to atone for the woman and to birth the new Eve, ultimately the church. But I want to look at something more. Genesis describes the creation of the woman in marriage in a very beautiful and a very significant way. Genesis 2:23-24. Then man said, "This is at last bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. Vayomer Adam, zot hapa'am, etzem, me'atzamai uvasar mibsari. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore, a man shall leave his wife and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. V'davak be'ishto v'hayu levasar echad." What does this phrase, one flesh, basar echad, mean? Well, when man and woman become one flesh, there is a bonding, there is a union that occurs. Woman was taken from man himself. Man and woman were originally one entity. There was this one unity. And so man and woman must become one again through this bonding, through the covenant of marriage, to reflect the unity and oneness of the Lord God. Okay? Marriage is not a contract, but a covenant that creates oneness, which is about spiritual unity. And this unity of man and woman testifies to the unity and triunity of the Godhead. So marriage is a picture of God and his people, of the bridegroom, Yeshua, and of his bride, the church. And so from a biblical perspective, this bonding of becoming Basar Echad, this union happens on several different levels. There is a physical bonding that occurs through marital relationship. And some rabbis say by the forming of children, that bond is cemented or taken to the next level. There's also bonding on another level, right? There is that physical bonding, but there is also a spiritual and emotional bonding that occurs when the two become one flesh. And we're not going to get into it here, but that's why sexual sin is so grievous and talked about in the New Testament, because through that physical means, there is a spiritual and emotional bond that occurs. And we have to guard our hearts from having that physical and emotional bonding happen with the wrong person. But what's also interesting here is, like, when you think about this bonding that occurs, and a man shall cleave to his wife. Well, the word for cleave is the Hebrew word davak. Can you say davak? Literally means to cleave. It's also used of us cleaving to God. It says, all who cleave to Lord your God are alive here today in the Torah. But what's interesting is that the word davak in modern Hebrew literally means glue, or it means to stick. And so literally, the husband is meant to be glued. He is meant to stick to his wife, kind of like permanent glue. I remember there was something called crazy glue growing up, and I remember we had I remember when I was little, one time I glued my fingers together, and I literally had to get nail polish to unstick my hands. Well, listen, that marriage relationship, we're meant to be glued. Nothing is meant to tear it apart. But I think there's something interesting about that, because we use the expression, they become unglued, mean literally everything falls apart. So we talked about family being the foundation of society. So listen, when marriage is attacked, literally what happens to society? It becomes unglued. We have to remain sticky. We have to remain connected to one another. And that's why followers of Yeshua need to have a very high view of marriage. And I want to continue to look at that here and talk about what should our attitude towards marriage be. Well, again, there's some deep insights into marriage from the Hebrew word for marriage. And the Hebrew word for marriage is nisuin. Can you say that with me? Nisuin, okay? And within that word, it tells us why marriage is so important, but it tells us the secrets of having a good marriage and making sure we can remain sticky, we maintain that stickiness. The Hebrew word for marriage is connected to the Hebrew word for gift. Why? Because marriage is one of the greatest gifts that God could ever give us. And on the good days and on the bad days, we need to be thankful for that gift. We need to treat marriage as a gift. Well, the Hebrew word for marriage, nisuin, comes from the Hebrew root nasa. And nasa literally means to elevate or to lift up, because marriage is meant to be something that elevates you. That's why he who finds a wife finds a good thing. Two are better together. Marriage is not always easy, but it's always meant to take us to the next level and to obtain greater heights. And so, as we said, marriage is like sandpaper for the soul. It will help you grow and help you to mature. But nasa also means to live, lift, or carry. The root word, again, of marriage. It's the picture of the groom carrying the bride across the threshold. So one of the primary responsibilities of marriage is for us to build one another up. We're actually meant to lift one another up. What's interesting is that the way that you say to count in the Torah is there's no word to literally count the people. This is what it says. Naso et rosh, lift up the heads of the people. The word nasa, the same word for marriage. So counting is to lift up the head. So if you want to make marriage count, one of the things you have to do is make sure that other person knows how much they count and literally lift up their heads, meaning encourage them, show them how much value that they have. That is one of the keys of marriage like God. He is the glory and lifter of our head. When we're discouraged, when we're struggling, we're meant to lift up each other's heads. But there's another rich meaning in the word nasa. Nasa can mean to forgive sins. In Exodus 34, it says God is nosei avon, the forgiver of iniquities. Look, in marriage, your spouse is going to hurt your feelings. You have a choice. If you want a bad marriage, you can hold on to those grudges. You can nurture that offense and understand that offense creates fences. So if you want there to be fences in your marriage that damages it, hold on to the offense. On the other hand, when we understand that marriage, at the root of it, can also mean to forgive, and just like God is nosei avon, we need to be willing to quickly forgive one another to deal with those issues. That's why the New Testament says, do not let the sun go down on your anger. But of course, there is more. Yes, be quick to forgive. But the word nasa also means to bear burdens. This is the essence of marriage. This is literally the essence of leadership. The head of each tribe of Israel, the 12 tribes, is known as the Nasi. The president of Israel in the modern state is known as the Nasi. It comes from the word nasa. It's connected to the word for marriage, nisuin. Because listen, the essence of marriage is like the essence of leadership. It's being a burden bearer. It's learning to bear one another's burdens and sacrificially support one another's. This is why Yeshua says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Yeshua bears our burdens. He bore that wooden cross for you and I. He bore the burden of sin. He's the example. He is love incarnate. And the rabbi in the Apostle Paul writes this about the essence of love. For the whole Torah is fulfilled in one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then he goes on to say, Galatians 6:2, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the Torah of Messiah. How do we fulfill the Torah? By loving our neighbor. How do we practically love our neighbor? By bearing one another's burden. By helping to make people's load lighter. And our first responsibility, the first person whom we're called to bear their burden, is our spouse to make it lighter. As we said, the word nasi can mean leader, it can mean prince, it can mean princess. And that gives us another important point. Treat your spouse like royalty. Give them the royal treatment. Let them know how important they are to you, how special they are in your life, and how much they mean to you, that what a gift they truly are from God to you. Now, I'm not going to get deep into this, but I think there are 6 major threats to having a great marriage. A marriage where you guys stick like glue to one another. And the first thing we need to understand is the first threat is a misguided view of marriage. There's many misguided views of marriage, but one is treating marriage like it's a contract and not a covenant. What do I mean by that? A contract is, listen, you meet my needs, I'll meet your needs. But as soon as you stop meeting my needs, you violated the contract, you've broken it, I'm moving on, and I'm going to be with somebody else. We treat our spouse like they are an ISP, an intimate service provider. That's not what they are. When we enter into covenant, which is what marriage is, which is how Genesis chapter 2 describes it, it's for better and for worse, for sickness and in health. It is meant to be unconditional. God takes breaking covenant seriously. There are grounds for divorce in the Bible, but let me tell you, it should always be the last resort. Threat number 2, turning to technology. The phone is one of the number one reasons why spouses don't have a deeper, more intimate relationship. Get off your phone. Stop looking at your phone, social media, text, and spend quality time with your wife and your family. All of us struggle with it. We need to do it. Threat number 3, the danger of busyness. You've heard it said, if Satan can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. Don't be busy. That's why we talk about the importance of Shabbat, time set aside regularly for family. Threat number 4, lack of communication. Making sure you're setting aside time for intimate discussion. How are we doing as a couple? What's going on in our marriage? What's going on in our personal lives? Don't grow apart. Communicate. Open up. Unfaithfulness. Listen, you can become unfaithful by looking at things on the internet that are not appropriate. You can commit adultery in your heart. You can have an emotional affair or emotional relationship that's not healthy. You can with someone of the same sex or platonically, right? Where that person is taking a place that ultimately your spouse should have. Don't do it. And threat number 6, not making your spouse your priority. So let's make sure we watch out for these threats. In the garden, the enemy attacked the marriage, the relationship of the first man and woman. He is still doing it today. But you know what? We know his plans and his schemes. There's nothing new under the sun. And I believe God wants you to have an even better marriage tomorrow than you do today. You know, today, no matter where you are, you can do better in your marriage. We can all do better in our marriage. I was convicted, even as I was preparing this, of things that I can do to take my marriage to the next level. And maybe right now, you're waiting for your spouse to come. You've never been married. Maybe you're divorced, and maybe you recognize some of these threats that led to the challenges in your marriage. And so I just want to encourage you to be proactive, to recognize that and understand there are things that we can do different. There's things that we can do better so that we can have a better marriage.